Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, this is 1977's Her Last Fling. 1977's Her Last Fling. You can see the poster art right there, and this is part of Vinegar Syndrome's Peakorama Big 2-Unit Show Full Color Widescreen Adult Showcase. They put out lots of these Peakoramas, and it's a beautiful thing. You get double features on here with Carnal Haven, but for tonight's purposes, we are just looking at Her Last Fling. Here is the back. We're going to see let's get some shots right here of just this particular film. And this is directed by Mr. Carlos Tobalina. Now, I've reviewed a lot of movies on this YouTube page and more to come from Carlos Tobalina. Vinegar Syndrome has put out a great selection of Tobalina films, and I had the opportunity to really dig into him and to really experience him as a director and enter into his world, and I've really fallen in love with him as a director. This is Her Last Fling, 1977. It's 74 minutes long, and this is taken from the 35 millimeter camera negative. Beautiful, beautiful treatment. It says on the back here in one sentence summary: after being told she only has weeks to live, a beautiful woman embarks on an erotic adventure. You're gonna recognize people's faces in here if you're familiar with X-rated films from the Golden Age, from the 70s and the 80s. You're going to see some familiar faces in here, especially from the lead, who's also in a movie called Babyface, which I've reviewed on this YouTube page from Alex Dorenzi. So let's get into this film here, folks. I'm going to move all over the place. I got some notes below me, so if you see my eyes divert, you'll know what's happening. Let's enter into Her Last Fling. I'm going to look at this film musically, going to look at it also in the style, cinematography, editing, thematically, the characters, anything else, as we move freely in freedom through this video praise of Her Last Fling. We have this amazing foggy cityscape that opens up this film, and it's done from such a high angle and such a beautiful angle, and it really reminded me, especially as the camera moves back and you're looking out of a hotel window as a girl is sitting on the windowsill, this huge window, high-rise floor, beautiful, foggy, yet very, very introspective cityscape. It reminded me a lot of Scarlett Johansson and Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation, which I thought was really, really interesting. Really, really high up. And we have orchestrated, dramatic music. It's beautiful. It's intense. And at times, at the beginning of the film, as you're listening to this music, you really feel as if you are going to be watching it could be possibly an atmospheric horror film, or it could be maybe a romance or an art house film. Very, very interesting with the music there, and it's a fascinating music introduction to the film that is that will confuse you and will mess with your emotions. As you know that you have pushed play on an X-rated film. We have first-person narration in this film from the lead character as we are journeying through her life, and then we enter into a red strobed title credit sequence where Carlos Tobalina is using an alias that I don't believe I've seen before, and I don't know how many more aliases are in the title credit sequence, but there's this red strobe-like effect. Sometimes Carlos Tobalina is known to use kind of different colored screens for credit sequences that can be really, really amazing in a completely dark room and a humongous projected screen or big TV screen. We have some old-time classic orchestrated music as well in this film. There are great reflections in this movie where essentially Carlos is filming through a window, and you are getting the action that's happening beyond the window, but you're also getting the reflections of the window and not seeing the cameraman. Really, really great stuff. There's this reflection window sequence that happens at a car shop, and there's a reflection window sequence that also happens a couple at a casino. Very, very cool shots. Reminded me a bit of Jess Franco's reflection shots in his film The Sex is Crazy, which I've also looked at on this YouTube page. There's an interesting theme in this film of when does it make sense to indulge. Her Last Fling is a movie that really, almost in a way, confronts and targets people who play it safe. Being overly frugal and prudish, with your money, with your time, overworking yourself, thinking less of yourself, not living life to the fullest, not taking risks, so on and so forth. We have an interesting amalgam and meld and connection and morphing of the music from disco to classical to electronic. Very, very interesting. We also have some really wild plays with focus where, especially in the first half of the film, I thought I saw a lot of things out of focus. And that reminds me in a lot of ways of a lot of Jess Franco films, where he plays with focus as well, and focus is looked at differently than, let's say, Hollywood films look at focus. We got some free jam and jazz in this movie as well. Really kind of the music just kind of flows. It jams. It could almost be a Grateful Dead jam, or it just flows and ebbs and moves. There's very little dialogue in this film. Extremely little dialogue in this film. And we do have first-person narration, but the real dialogue of this movie is the music. Lots of Carlos Tobalina films, it's almost as if you're listening to a radio station as one song ends, the next song begins, and sometimes they don't end; they just kind of cut into the next song, and you're getting this cavalcade of styles. We have some jovial music pieces in here as well, kind of quirky, kind of fun, interesting. This beautiful section in Vegas where our lead character's hair is blowing and it's dusk, and it's just the palm trees in the distance, and the breeze. You can almost feel the breeze. You can almost feel the Vegas breeze there, and what it must feel like, and it just looks awesome. These great shots in Vegas through a waterfall. And kind of there's mini waterfalls in front of a nice casino or hotel. We definitely are not only using reflections through opening store windows, but we're also utilizing mirrors in this film. This great kind of mirror with all those bald retro lights around it. Our lead character looking through it, really defining introspection. But then also, there's an orgy sequence involving, with mirrors all around it. Really, really cool stuff. The interesting thing about the sex in this film, the sex is the film. The sex is the substance. Extremely little dialogue in the film, and the music is the dialogue, and the sex is also the dialogue. If you know Carlos Tobalina's style, Carlos is a director of adult films who really likes to focus on the sex. The sex is number one. It's priority, and the sex is the substance. So very, very long sex scenes, and just great. Really, really great stuff. And there's no intro to the sex. There's no beginning to the sex scenes. You never meet the characters before the sex scenes in Her Last Fling. We have our character walking and having her first person narration and introspection, and then all of a sudden there's a sex scene with characters that you don't really know. There might be minimal dialogue with one of those characters indicative of possibly the budding of a new relationship or romance, but the sex scenes just bust in, not the beginning of them, right in the middle of them, it seems. We have some slide guitar in here, some country music as well that kind of brings itself in, really as a sucker punch. And then some very crazy space, dark, horrific atmospheric sequences in this film as well, which happen to get repeated, I think, about 2 times. Really dark, could have their place in a horror film, could have their place in maybe John Carpenter's The Thing, or it was really interesting, and it redefined the sex that was happening on the screen. It was interesting. I know Carlos Tobalina sometimes will use ejaculation sequences and put some sound effects on it, and it almost seemed at times that when the ejaculation sequences were happening, that was at the height of those space sounds, or maybe it was just what I was thinking it was my interpretation of it, and it really wasn't that way. But we do have really this, all the ejaculation shots happen at, in these groups, of sorts, and I believe 1 or 2 of them are repeated, which Carlos Tobalina also is known to do. He'll repeat them from different angles. And there's a really awkward sequence, especially for a straight X-rated film, where we have three guys on a couch masturbating, and they're very close to each other, and their legs are on top of each other, and things like that. They are watching a massive lesbian sequence, but nonetheless, an interesting scene for a kind of a straight adult erotic feature. Very, very interesting. And the lesbian sequence that I'm talking about is our lead character and about 6 or 7 women, girls with her, and it's one of the most wondrous sequences in the film. This is a film where the sex is typically orgies. People in a room having sex, really, one on one, but all together in the same room. Sometimes it might be 2 in 1, but it's not like the end of of Taboo or something like that, which I'll be looking at in the future on this YouTube page. Individuals in the same space, occupying the same space, having sex. But you really see in her face in that lesbian sequence our lead character with the orchestrated dramatic music that we are already familiar with in this film. It's speaking paragraphs without any dialogue whatsoever. Her face in that lesbian sequence, her intensity, her erotic passion, her sexuality, but also her introspection and the journey she's taking and the life that she's lived and the life that she has left is all in her face, and it's a profound sequence. Love and free love is in this film as well. Monogamy, a monogamy existing within the space of free love as well. There was an interesting theme and quote from her in this film where she says, before, when I wasn't dying, I was constantly trying to find time. But now I have all the time. I have all the time now as I'm dying. Very, very interesting thing. There's a great quote from our lead character in this film that I had to share. She says, "The way to really get to know people is an orgy." And what a great quote in comparison to her working at a bank. She thought that's how she could know people, but the way to know people is through an orgy. Amazing shots of the Golden Gate Bridge in this film. Unbelievable. If you have vertigo, you will feel the dizziness right there. We have interesting shots of statues, and you'll redefine that statue of like a little boy holding his penis, and that's where the water comes out of like a bird pond or something like that. And it's redefined when people are having sex all around that statue. There are other statues referenced in this film as well, shown in this film as well, that are couples and having sex or sexuality. Really, in a way, Carlo's kind of, to me, showing sculptured art, and now you're watching motion picture art, both sexual and one moving and one not moving, both made with human bodies. And we also have this kind of a vehicle that's bought, and money is spent, and our lead character had money for a rainy day, and now she knows she's dying, and now she needs to spend her money. She even gives her car away after she buys it. All the things she wanted to do. She's winning money at the casino. She's having orgies. It's an interesting thing also audio-wise, is that I feel like some of the moans are sampled in this film as well, throughout the film, and they're great moans, and Carlos Tobalina is also known to do that with audio samples through the film, kind of reusing them. We also seemingly have some other footage with John Holmes in this film as well. And the interesting thing is it's with a character who's actually in the film, but it seems to be footage from another film as well. Our lead character is peaceful, yet she's about to die, and she finds that strange. She's contemplative, and there's introspections. And there's an interesting theme in this film, too, where doctors, they really don't know what life is, what life really is, and what part the mind plays, the power of the mind, the theme in this film. And that the power of the mind, if the mind can make you sick, the mind can make you well. And that wellness involving sexuality and free love. And the film ends on a red screen sentence or a phrase written right on the screen, and it says, "Fucking makes life." Wow. Fucking makes life. To me, that has two meanings for this particular film. Yes, it makes children, as Franco always seemed to defend himself with, but also we're all here from fucking, but also that in this particular film, Her Last Fling from 1977, fucking actually provided her life, and there's a twist ending to this film. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like Her Last Fling from 1977. Thank you, Vinegar Syndrome, and thank you for watching.